right, so here we are. We're looking at number 2 from the Introduction to Vectors worksheet. And what we have here is a question that's asking about two force vectors. One is A, which is pulling 3 newtons east. So I'm representing that in blue here. So we've drawn a vector that represents 3 newtons of force being pulled to the east. We also have a vector B, which is being 4 newtons being pulled to the north. And both of these two forces are acting on an object at the same time. And the question is asking us to take the sum of these two force vectors, A plus B, in order to determine what's the overall force being pulled on this object. And since they're not being pulled in the same direction, we have to think of the two-dimensionality of the problem. So we think of this as like a helicopter view. We're looking down at the vectors. We can think of the object as being pretty much anywhere we'd like, but what we've done here is put the object being here and realize that the force of 3 newtons and the force of 4 newtons is acting on that object at the same time. But to see what happens with the sum of those two forces, we need to build a triangle. And so what we do is we say, okay, we have a vector going north of 4 newtons, at the same time a vector going east of 3 newtons, and the overall addition of those two vectors is going to be the hypotenuse of this addition. Notice we've put the tail of one vector on the head of the other. So we have the red 4 going up, the blue 3 going to the right. And so this would be one way to draw it. Notice it was kind of arbitrary whether I put the 4 first or the 3 first. So that's what this picture is about over here. We're showing that, well, what if I'd done it the other way? I'd have the blue vector going east, 3 newtons first, and then I would have the 4 newton north vector going second. And it's basically saying that B plus A is the same as A plus B when you're adding vectors, which makes total sense. And this green vector that we get in either case is exactly the same vector. Notice that we might talk about it slightly differently, but it's exactly the same length and pointing exactly the same direction. Once you've built a proper triangle, whether it's this one or whether it's this one, the math's pretty simple. You're going to get the hypotenuse here by looking at Pythagorean theorem. So we can just, obviously this is a 3, 4, 5 triangle, so maybe you recognize the special triangle. But if not, you're doing the square root of 3 squared plus 4 squared in order to figure out that this is 5. The angle, we're going to use arctangent to get the angle. So here we have this angle is the one we're after. We know that the tangent of this angle is the opposite over the adjacent. So we can say, okay, I take 3 divided by 4, and then I do, on the calculator, it's the second button where you hit second tangent. Anyway, you go arctangent of 3 over 4. Make sure your calculator is in degrees, and you should get 36.9. If you had drawn the picture this way, your arctangent's different, right? Because you're going to have the long side as the opposite. So you do arctangent of 4 over 3. And you get a different number here. You get a 53.1 if you do this one, and you get a 36.9 if you do the arctangent of 3 over 4. And that's what it's supposed to be. That's good that you're getting 2 different answers. The problem is when you're communicating these, there's different ways to say it. So this one, where the green line is coming above the east. Notice here we have east, and then we're drawing our angle from the east. Then we're going to call this north of east, because I was going to go east, but instead I went a little bit north of it. I went 53.1 degrees north of east. Where here the angle is being referenced to the north. So here we're going to say, oh, I was going to go north, but now I'm going east of it a bit. So we call it east of north, and we get a different number, 36.9. So hopefully that helps you understand a little bit about how to do number 3. You can look up online if you're not remembering how to do an arctangent. Just make sure your calculator's in degrees. Good luck.